And here's Carson. Oh, yeah, he's an Eagles green. Oh, it happened. Thursday night, it became official. Carson Wentz is an Eagle. Jeremy Burton, Mike Owens, they're both here. I'm Adrian. Thank you. We're at Nick's Roast Beef for the draft party. When the announcement was made, wow, amazing. I didn't think he was going to get that sort of reaction. Just complete euphoria. When not only Jared Goff was picked, but Wentz as well.
Well, there it is. Mr. Wentz. You know, we went to the draft party at Nick's Roast Beef. We had an awesome time, and we got there, and they had these cutouts of Carson Wentz. Well, there was no cutouts of Jared Goff. I think there was maybe one or two floating around the room. So if the Rams would have went and picked Wentz with the #1 overall pick, we would have been in some trouble there at Nick's Roast Beef because we only had the Wentz heads available. But it all worked out for us Eagles fans, and the Rams decided to go with Goff, which was the predicted pick for them. And then the Eagles went up there, and they got their man in Wentz. So, we all had a great time, and it was a great night for all because we hopefully got our next franchise quarterback.
Yeah, big time shout out to Philly Influencer and Bleeding Green Nation. It was a great time at Nick's Roast Beef. It was great meeting all those guys and all those guys from Twitter. We got our guy. It was a great time. You can feel the excitement and the freshness of this new direction the Eagles are going in with all the Sammy sleeves nonsense, and we just know that we're on the right track. Hopefully we found our next franchise quarterback for 10 years. The Bitterbird's been talking about Wentz for months, and it was kind of, just a great feeling finally to just, hey, we actually got him. It actually happened. So now I'm excited for a new direction of the Birds, man.
Here's where I got a question for you guys. A huge question. So Thursday, obviously, we go to the draft party. We already know who the Eagles are going to take. We had known for 8 days who the Eagles are going to take. Can you imagine what the reaction would have been had the Eagles not traded up yet, had it, happened while the Browns were on the clock? Can you imagine the madness and the shenanigans at Nick's Roast Beef if that would have happened? Wow.
Well, yeah, you want to talk about, blowing the roof off of a building. That's what that would have done there. It's pretty crazy because, just to think, you go back, about a month, and, not everyone in Philadelphia was on the Wentz wagon. There was people that still had their doubts about this guy, and it seems like as the days leading up to the draft and everyone in Philadelphia realized that Wentz was the guy that we were getting. They were able to sit down and really watch some tape on this guy, and they realized that he might be the real deal. So it's like everybody just fell in love with Wentz, and the anticipation was, it just built up day by day. But if we didn't know, on that day until that moment, and we would have traded up, the reaction would have been maybe double or triple of what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. We had Nick's Roast Beef. We had the huge reaction when they picked Goff, knowing that we were going to get Wentz, and there was a big reaction when we actually drafted Wentz. So the way I put it is, if we would have, there would have been no reaction for Goff if we were still sitting at 8, and then you see the trade happen, the Browns are on the clock, and then boom, Eagles are on the clock. It would have been, like Mike said, 3 or 4 times. I don't, Mike, you would have lost your voice in one shot. You already almost did. I've never seen you react quite like that. It was so much fun. I was even afraid to give you a high five, dude. I thought you were going to take my arm out. I was like, well. But, no, it was great, and it worked out because, the way the draft went out, played through, if we stuck at 8, Ezekiel would not have been there. Ronnie Stanley wouldn't have been there. There was Laremy Tunsil and the whole bong hit through a gas mask thing, so we probably would have avoided him. Even Ozzie Newsome said himself that they would have taken Tunsil at 6 if it wasn't for that video that surfaced. Will we have reached for Jack Conklin, or I was talking to Hargraves a lot, the corner, at 8 if we would have stayed there. So I mean, I would have went that way, but it all worked out. We got our guy. I'm ready. I'm on the Wentz wagon. I think a lot of Philly is, and this kid he just knows what to say. He just got so much potential, and I think he's got that it factor, and I hope this is our franchise quarterback for a long time.
I have no idea how the fan base would have reacted had that happened that night, because I remember when the trade immediately happened, not too many people liked it. They were just freaking out. They were just like, "Oh my God, we gave up all these picks for Carson Wentz. Why did we do that? Why? All these holes we got to fill, all that." So I don't know if it would have necessarily been warmly received. I think it would have been something like they would have maybe booed a little bit, but yeah, I would have been really curious to see had that actually happened. And as Jeremy explained, at number 8, everybody wanted Zeke. He went number 4 to Dallas. And I do want to talk about Zeke right now. He wasn't somebody I thought about before the show, but right now, this is very, very important, because Dallas just became the favorite in the NFC East. I don't think people want to hear it, but it's true. Oh my God. So he basically replaces DeMarco Murray on that offensive line. Dallas is going to run the ball with Zeke like 25 times a game. You're going to have Tony Romo with the play action to Dez deep. That's scary. So I expect Dallas to move the ball pretty easily up and down the field. They may not score a lot of points per se, because the drives are going to be methodical. They're going to be slow. They're going to take a lot of time off the clock. But having Zeke in that offense, oh my God. Oh, I'm scared.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks being an Eagles fan knowing that the Cowboys got, Elliott, but I think we had some time to prepare. I mean, leading up to the draft, all the mock drafts seemed to trend to have the Cowboys going with Elliott. It was either going to be Elliott or Ramsey. I think that really the bigger surprise for me, right before the Cowboys pick, was the Chargers going with Bosa. That's a pick that was really a surprise, because I thought that the Chargers were going to go with Ramsey, and then with Ramsey being off the board, that's why the Cowboys would go with Elliott. But the Cowboys actually had a choice there. They could have went with Elliott or Ramsey, and they chose to go with Elliott. And, I mean, can't blame them. I mean, you put him behind that offensive line. I mean, the guy's just going to be an absolute beast. So I really, in Philadelphia, I mean, we got to deal with this guy for a long time now. And, I mean, all we can hope for is that maybe he gets injured or something.
Oh, man. Seeing the Tales from the Crypt looking Jerry Jones with his little glass of Johnny Walker in that room with that stupid smile on his face, and Jason Garrett right on his side with the same stupid smile on his face. Oh, man, it really pissed me off knowing that they would get such a dynamite running back behind such a great offensive line. I mean, Cowboys got to figure them a lock for 10 wins. They might give up a lot of points. The defense is questionable, but with that offense, I mean, like Adrian said, play action to Dez. They got Zeke, that beautiful offensive line. They're gonna move the chains. Let's just say that. And it's scary. We're gonna have to deal with this kid for a long time. And it's definitely not good for for us. We got to win that battle in the trenches. Fletcher Cox is going to be busy trying to penetrate that backfield and stop Zeke before he gets across the line of scrimmage.
All right, let's talk about just some other quick topics just before we get to the rest of the Eagles picks. Well, first of all, that Laremy Tunsil video, I don't care what people say. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was like the greatest thing ever. The guy smoked a fucking bong in a gas mask. Like, that is fucking awesome. I'm sorry. That is amazing. And I still would have drafted him at number 8. I don't care. I don't care if he's high on the football field. I'm sure he's still better than Ronnie Stanley. But it's crazy because at 8, Eagles couldn't get Stanley. They probably wouldn't have picked Tunsil because of that. So you're probably looking at Vernon Hargreaves. But the funny thing about Vernon Hargreaves, you look at the New York Giants. They took Eli Apple instead of Vernon Hargraves. Idiots. Idiots.
Yeah, just the way everything worked out, it was just bizarre with the Tunsil video just coming out, just as the draft was really getting underway. Really scared off a lot of teams. And the ironic part about this whole situation is that, the Tunsil was a possible #1 overall pick in this draft, and he ends up falling all the way to 13. And, well, we all know that number 13 was the pick that the Philadelphia Eagles, originally had in his draft before they made the moves to get up to number 2. So, you look back on it, if the Eagles would have stayed at 13, they could have picked Tunsil. And obviously, Tunsil would have been a better, solution for the present. But, the Eagles made the right move by going up. They got their franchise quarterback, so now they're better off for the future. But, we'll see how, Tunsil works out there in Miami. And then, Tunsil was supposed to have his introductory press conference, and he ended up having some kind of allergic reaction right before that. So he couldn't do the press conference at that time. He did end up doing it later that night. But, yeah, I mean, this guy, it's just one thing after another. His Instagram account also got hacked the night of the draft. So, it's safe to say that, Tunsil has some work to do with the PR department.
That's for damn sure. I mean, come on, we've all smoked pot in our day. I mean,
never. I've never touched it.
We've done it, and but Tunsil, it's just the idioticness, if that's a word. It's not.
We'll make it a word.
How stupid can you be to allow yourself?
Idiocy is the correct word.
Whether it was last year, 2 weeks ago, whatever. If you're you're going to the NFL, you know it, and you don't let anybody take a video of you and have that in their back pocket to ever use against you. Never. I mean, he cost himself about $7-8 million in dropping from whatever top 6 to 6th to 13th, let's say, if the Ravens took him at 6. So it's just dumb, wasn't a smart move on his part. But, it doesn't take away the fact that he's a big-time talent. He's a big boy. He has allowed hardly any sacks in his whole career in college. And, I think, Dolphins got themselves a steal as long as he can keep his shit together and doesn't mess up anymore or have any dumb mistakes. I think he'll be fine, and he'll be a premier tackle in this league.
I don't think Miami really, really cares if you smoke weed. I mean, they took back Ricky Williams, so he's the biggest pothead in NFL history. So I think they'll be okay. The thing about this draft that was very, very interesting to me, it seemed like a lot of players were getting taken high. There was a lot of reaches, and then there was also a lot of interesting storylines of players who fell. Obviously, the situation with Jalen Smith and Miles Jack. Dallas takes Jalen Smith in the second round. You had Miles Jack going to Jacksonville. These were both potential top 10 picks like a couple months ago. So you have that going on. Andrew Billings fell to the third round. A guy that we were talking about before, Kenneth Dixon, fell until like the 5th round. Paul Perkins fell until the 5th round, running back. I just wanted to touch on that real quick. But we're going to talk about our draft right after we talk about Sam Bradford. 2 teams last week headed into the draft needing starting quarterbacks. You had the Jets and you had the Broncos. The Jets were not interested in Sammy. They didn't want Sammy. But Denver was a potential trade partner. Unfortunately, Howie Roseman, he didn't want to give up. Well, Denver didn't want to give up enough ammunition for the Eagles to trade Bradford. So Denver went. They traded up in the first round. They took Paxton Lynch of Memphis. So Sam right now, he's got no leverage. You got to shut up and play. All right? Just show up and play and just go out there, win some ball games. Stop being a fucking bitch.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way that Bradford and his agent, played this whole situation, I mean, their end goal had to be for him to get traded. The problem with that is he didn't get traded, and now Bradford has to face the music. He's going to have to come out and play this year in front of the Philadelphia fans, and well, they're not going to give him a warm greeting. I can tell you that much. Bradford is definitely going to be thankful that when the Eagles open the season, they open in the summertime, so there won't be any snow on the field or in the seats to throw snowballs because. It's going to be ugly, but, I mean, the guy has to play. He's got no other options. He's literally backed himself into a corner, and there's no way out of it. The only thing that he could possibly do is retire at this point. Quite frankly, he might be better off retiring the way that he's handled this whole situation. He's made himself look like a complete fool. He has to go out there and compete at this point. Because if he doesn't, I mean, he's just going to look like a big vagina.
Yeah, well, he's got to definitely clean the sand out of that vagina of his because this is, I mean, it's just getting ridiculous. He's a smart guy. He knows that there's no market for him. You're right, he has zero leverage. The Eagles are not going to eat that $11 million. He's basically saying to him, shut up and show up and play. And even Doug Peterson said, he's losing valuable time right now. This is another brand new offense, like his fourth or fifth brand new offense in his 6-year career now. So I think he's jeopardizing his future career. You're right. He might be better off to retire. He's made what? It'll be like $90 million by the time, guaranteed by the time if he gets this $22 million guaranteed from us. So yeah, I just think it's ridiculous, and I would not be surprised if at some point during the year that he could even get benched if he's playing bad, and you'll hear the fans cheering, "We want Carson, we want Carson." I guarantee it.
Oh, dude, it's going to happen in week 1. It's going to happen in week 1 of the preseason. He's done. Sam is done. Oh, my. All right. Let's talk about our draft now. So, due to the Cleveland Browns trade and the fact that we traded Sam Bradford last year, the Eagles only had a first and third round pick. They got a third round pick last year when they traded their fourth for a future third. So that's why they had the third. So you look at the first 4 rounds, Eagles only had 2 picks. But if you look at the last 3 rounds, the Eagles, they moved around in the draft just once. They traded down. They got an extra pick, I believe, in the 6th round or something. So they had 2 fifths, a 6th, and 3 7ths. Basically, they addressed their needs in this draft. They got a pair of offensive linemen. They got a running back. They got a cornerback. They got a safety. But here's the thing about drafting these needs. I thought these players that they drafted, I thought there were better players on the board, players that were better than the guys that they got. But here's what I'll say. I'm not a guy that's going to grade this draft. All right, I'm done grading. Grades are like the stupidest thing ever because everybody last year, including myself, would have given Jordan Hicks an F. So grades are stupid. They're stupid. We'll find out how these players pan out in a couple years. But from the looks of it, on paper, just from judging it, it feels like we reached for a couple guys, but we did address a lot of very, very important needs that we have.
Yeah, I mean, when you go and you look at this draft, really the key pick in the whole draft besides our second selection there, number 2 overall with Carson Wentz, was going to be that 3rd round pick because we knew that after the 3rd round we weren't going to have another pick until the 5th round. So we really needed to go in with that 3rd round pick and essentially get a starter. And, they went with an offensive lineman, Isaac Seumalo, and he's from Oregon State. He's a guy that was born in Hawaii. Eagles like him because he's versatile. He's a powerful guy, so that'll fit in with Doug Peterson along that offensive line. The Eagles are really looking to get powerful guys along that line. And I think that, he's a guy that might actually come in and compete for the starting left guard position. I wasn't ecstatic about the pick. I'm kind of neutral with the pick right now. I want to see the guy go out and play, but I think it was a good addition in the fact that I feel like he's a guy that can go out there and start if he needs to at some point this year. I don't think he's going to end up being the starting left guard, but I think maybe second half of the season, he could be a guy that you start to see out there more and more. And, we'll get into this later, but, this is another, addition where it kind of puts, Kelsey's future here in jeopardy.
Yeah, a couple things I like about Seumalo is the versatility. He's played at every position on the offensive line, guard, tackle, and center. Obviously, that's big. And he's a 300-plus pounder, which and I've seen him. I watched a couple highlights from him. He can maul people. And in the power running game that Doug Peterson likes to run, fits our scheme, I think. And I think he'll compete for that starting left guard spot with Wisniewski and Barbary and among others that we bring on. So we'll see how he fits. And you're right. I mean, unless Kelsey drastically improves off last year, I mean, he might not fit Doug Peterson's scheme, and you could see Isaac getting in there and getting some playing time. The guy I kind of wanted in the third round, but obviously the Eagles thought we could get a running back in the later rounds, is I would like Kenneth Dixon out. I mean, I think he could be a top 3 running back in this draft. And obviously they didn't think it was worth the reach. I mean, he's versatile too. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and obviously he's been a pretty consistent runner in college. But we went with Mr. Wendell Smallwood. Let's just hope his last name has nothing to do with his sex life, or the Philly ladies will be drastically disappointed. So I mean, he's a guy I didn't know much about him in college, but I watched a little bit of highlights from him. He's a smaller guy, but he's got quickness and a good cut, good step. I just seen a little bit of explosiveness and quickness, but he's going to struggle in pass protection for sure. Like I said, he's a little undersized, so we'll see how he works out.
Yeah, we'll get to the running back in a little bit. Because, I did want to comment on what you talked about with Dixon and stuff. But getting back to Seumalo, of his 37 starts in college, 23 came at center, 9 came at right guard, 3 at left guard, and a pair on the other side at right tackle. So, as you can see, he's probably more suited to play inside as opposed to outside, but again, very, very versatile guy. And back to the Eagles, addressing the offensive line this offseason. So you bring in Brandon Brooks as a free agent. That solidifies the right guard spot for you. So other guys, now at left guard, all of a sudden you got a bunch of different options you can go with. Because Seumalo, we've seen third-round guards start right from the beginning. So you'll have Stefan Wisniewski. You'll have Seumalo. You'll have Malcolm Bunchy. You'll have Alan Barbary. So you got some competition there at left guard. You can only hope that someone emerges, and that someone who emerges can be average. And even if someone does emerge in training camp, if he struggles, at least you have some other options. So you can play some musical chairs until someone actually fits for the long haul.
Yeah, and the key this year along the offensive line and acquiring the depth like you just talked about is that we're going to have some pretty decent options that we can plug in there at the guard position. I mean, last season, we really struggled there at the position, injuries and whatnot, really reaching with some of these guys that we were putting in there. And obviously, when Jason Peters kept getting hurt, we had to really, shuffle the whole offensive line. So really, this season, the offensive line, it should end up being a strength, assuming that everyone can stay relatively healthy. The Eagles have, a lot of depth, a lot more depth that they had in a while. And this is really the first time that we've done a decent job of addressing the offensive line since 2013, Chip's first year, when we drafted Lane Johnson.
Yeah, this was the first time that we picked an offensive lineman since Lane Johnson in 2013. I guess Chip didn't believe in that. He figured he could just plug and play anybody, and obviously having journeyman guards all year last year starting was a downfall in our offensive line. And Jason Peters had struggled with injuries, but I think those guards really affected Jason Kelsey's play. So we'll see having a nice anchor like Brandon Brooks next to Kelsey if Kelsey can improve his play. And obviously we have better options at left guard than the likes of Tobin and Gardner last year. Barbary was okay, but I think we did a great job addressing the depth. I mean, that's huge in case there's an injury. But I definitely think it's a big year for both the Jasons to show they still got something left in the tank.
Yeah, by the way, the other guy that the Eagles drafted, 5th round, tackle, TCU's Halapulu Vaitai. I think I got that right. So that's the other guy the Eagles drafted. But the depth here, depth is the key word to all this. Because if you remember the last 2 years, well, at least 2 years ago. Remember 2 years ago. Look, think about who our offensive line was. Jason Peters. You had Jason Kelsey, obviously, at center. You had Lane Johnson at right tackle. But the guards, Evan Mathis and Todd Harriman. So that fivesome right there, it was one of the best offensive lines in the league. But the problem was, behind those guys, we had nobody. We had absolutely nobody. So when guys were going down like flies, we had no depth behind them. So that's why our offensive line struggled so badly. So now, at least we have some guys behind these guys. So we actually have some legitimate kind of backups. It's a little bit better than it has been the last couple of years. So that's what I have to say about that. And moving on to Jason Kelsey, because it's interesting that you signed not only Wisniewski, but now you draft Seumalo, who is more a center than he played more center than he did guard any position in college. So we've talked about Kelsey before. He's a 285-pound center in an offense that wants to play power football. So I don't know if he's going to adjust. I don't think Doug Peterson obviously doesn't know because he's drafting a center and he signed a center. So if he struggles adjusting the power football, at least Doug's got some ammunition there on the bench, because if you look at what KC did with Mitch Morse last year, the center, he's 305. Seumalo is 303. Wisniewski, 305. Jason Kelsey, 285.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. The biggest thing is the weight there at the center position, and Kelsey just doesn't have the weight. I mean, these guys, Wisniewski and Seumalo, like you just mentioned, over 300 pounds. That's really one with you center if you're going with power football. So for Kelsey, this is really a make it or break it year for him. He kind of really struggled last year. He's got to come back this year and have a good season. Jeremy mentioned this earlier, but maybe having better guards will help Kelsey out. I mean, that's the hope for the Eagles, but I think with the Eagles are kind of setting themselves up nicely here, because if Kelsey doesn't work out this season and has another bad year, in the future, they've got a backup plan for Kelsey going forward.
And, I really do like Jason Kelsey as a leader, as a player. I've seen him play at a very high level. Although it wasn't Chip Kelly's scheme, this is a different scheme. We just got to see if he's able to adjust. He's a smart guy, like I said, a great leader. So I hope he improves. I hope he bulks up a little bit. Hit those restaurants, eat, you big boy, and maybe pack a couple pounds on and do what you got to do to adjust to this new scheme. If not, you definitely got some possible centers breathing down your neck with Wisniewski and Seumalo, as we mentioned.
I mean, if you look at if Jason Kelsey was in the right scheme, he's a potential top 10 center in the league. He's that good. He's that talented. He has the potential to be that good. He's a leader, like you said. But in this scheme, I don't know how he's going to fare. When you think of small centers, obviously the first name that comes to mind, you think of Jeff Saturday. But the thing with Jeff Saturday he was always in a zone blocking type of scheme. So smaller guys are obviously a little bit more suited for that. You can move a little better when you're smaller. But here, you got to push people backwards. You got to be mean. You got to be mad. You got to have power. And I don't know if Kelsey has all those attributes. I just don't know. So that's that. All right, moving on. Running backs now. Jeremy touched on this earlier. Here's the thing about Smallwood. Here's the thing. Here's why I got a little bit of a problem with it. Because, well, the Eagles could have traded up for a better running back, or they could have just taken Kenneth Dixon in the 3rd round, which they should have done. But if you look at the guys who went right before the Eagles picked, all right, so four picks prior to the Eagles picking Smallwood. You had Kenneth Dixon and or not Kenneth Dixon, Jordan Howard and UCLA's Paul Perkins. So these guys were taken 4 picks prior. Late in the 4th round, that's where you had Dixon and Utah's Devontae Booker go. So you had 4 running backs go before the Eagles picked in the 5th round, and then they finally take one in Smallwood. I mean, to me, Smallwood's just a guy. I don't think he's going to amount to much. I think he's just like a 3rd down back. I just think he's just a rotational guy. That's it. That's all he is. He's not anything special. But if you could have gotten Perkins, if you could have gotten Dixon, if you could have gotten Booker, all of a sudden it looks a little better.
Yeah, I mean, with the Eagles, deciding to go with the offensive lineman there in the 3rd round, they kind of knew that they were going to screw themselves over for picking a running back in the 5th round, because there was just so much time in between their pick in the 3rd round and the 5th round. That's, some of the better running backs ready to go in that time, and that's what happened. We talked about Kenneth Dixon. He's a guy that we kind of wanted. The Eagles could have got him in the 3rd round, and, well, they decided to wait, and, well, they waited too long because Dixon went before the Eagles picked in the 5th round. So, yeah, the Eagles ended up with Smallwood. Hard to get excited about this guy, but it's a guy that he's not going to do much this season, so he's really a guy that you're going to have to wait and see for a few years to see how he pans out. But as far as this season goes, can't really expect too much out of this guy.
Yeah, like I mentioned quickly earlier, I mean, he's undersized. He's got some quickness. Maybe he can do something in the open field. But, yeah, I see him just being a rotational guy, 3rd down back, because we got, Sproles and Matthews ahead of him, and I would even put Barner ahead of him. I mean, I like if he can stay healthy. Ryan Matthews is obviously the best option. He's a physical runner. That's part of the problem. Being a physical runner is how he gets hurt. So, I mean, Ryan Matthews has been a top 15 pick in his draft, and he's shown the potential to have a 1,000-yard season. He was our best running back last year as far as yards per carry, and obviously he's better than Murray. He's our best option running back, and hopefully he can stay healthy, rotate Sproles in. I mean, get Smallwood, some playing time. I mean, get him a taste of the NFL. Maybe he'll bust a play or two. We'll see. Really don't know much about this guy. Definitely would have liked to have our 4th round pick back that we traded to Cleveland, because then we obviously could have gotten Kenneth Dixon.
Yeah, Smallwood, 1,519 yards. Did lead the conference, did lead the Big 12, but just hard to get excited about him. I'm just hoping that he turns out like another West Virginia Mountaineer, and his name was Steve Slayton back in the day. That's like what I'm hoping for. Kind of a similar kind of runner. So that's what you can hope for. Now, the positive thing about all of this, next year's running back class is absolutely loaded. We don't have a 1st round pick, but we do have a 2nd round pick. So you look at a lot of guys there next year, you're looking at Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Samaje Perine, Wayne Gallman. Obviously, just a loaded class there. Leonard Fournette will be long gone by the time we pick. But there's potential next year, and that's what I'm hoping the Eagles can do, just attack the position next year when the crop is a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, judging by the way that the Eagles attacked this draft, deciding to wait a little bit longer to pick a running back, it seems like they're going to decide to, draft a running back, in that second or third round next year.
Yeah, obviously, Smallwood's not going to be the answer for the future, and I don't think Matthews is either. I believe Matthews only was signed to a 2-year deal last year, so this is his last year unless we re-sign him. So I think we have a second-round pick next year at least. If we want to spend that on a running back, I wouldn't be opposed if the right guy's there.
All right, moving on. Just throwing the names of the rest of the guys that the Eagles drafted. You had cornerback Blake Countess of Auburn go in the 6th round. Jalen Mills, safety of LSU, the first of 3 7th-round picks. You have Florida's Alex McAllister in the 7th. And to close it out, Eagles take linebacker Joe Walker. The thing that I was a little bit surprised, they didn't take a receiver. That's the only one I was a little bit surprised about. But they have gone out and they have attacked wide receiver during the offseason by signing a bunch of guys to 1-year deals. So you have Ruben Randall, you have Chris Givens. They just signed another kid from Buffalo. I am blanking, but they just signed another kid. Not a big name or anything, but a guy that will add some speed. So they didn't attack wide receiver. Because I remember in the 3rd round, we took Seumalo over Braxton Miller and Leonte Carew, I believe. They went right after Seumalo went.
Yeah, Braxton Miller was definitely one of the bigger names that was on the board at that time, and I was interested to see if the Eagles were going to take a shot at him because the guy's such an athlete. But the Eagles decided to pass. I really think with the wide receiver position, the Eagles, I guess they feel comfortable considering that they did get, Givens and Ruben Randall in free agency. So I think by them acquiring those 2 guys in free agency, some veteran guys that can help come in and help the younger guys like Matthews and Aguilar and Huff, I guess Eagles felt pretty comfortable with the wide receiver position. And really, the wide receiver position wasn't that great after the top names went off the board in this draft. So Eagles decided to bypass the wide receivers in this draft.
Yeah, I think the Eagles feel pretty comfortable with where they are at wide receiver. They did address the needs in free agency, and big wild card here is the 1st-round pick from last year, Nelson Aguilar. I think he has to take a big jump this season. They obviously feel confident that he can do that. Also spent a pretty high pick on Jordan Matthews. He was an early 2nd-round pick 2 years ago. So we have spent high picks on wide receivers the past 2 years. Obviously we feel all right with where we're at. Who's going to throw him the ball? We could be one of 3 guys. We don't even know yet. But I think that those guys step up, and we got a little bit of a deep threat with Chris Givens now. But Ruben Randall, I think, could be starting opposite Nelson Aguilar on the outside with Jordan Matthews in the slot. I think Ruben Randall has nice hands. He's my favorite free agent wide receiver we signed.
Okay. All right. Before we head out, I guess the question I'll ask is this: favorite draft pick not named Carson Wentz?
Yeah, mine is definitely Jalen Mills, LSU safety. This is a guy who I think is really good, better suited for cornerback in the NFL, especially the slot corner position. And Jim Schwartz's defense, he's a guy that you can, really blitz in the slot position. So I really like Jalen Mills there. He's a guy that definitely wasn't a 7th-round pick. He should have went higher. He was probably like a 5th or 6th-round guy, but he's had, a little bit of a checkered past, so that kind of deterred some teams away from him. But I think that, when we look back on this draft, I actually think that besides Carson Wentz, I think that as far as getting a starter, If you take away the Seumalo pick, I think that Jalen Mills might be a guy that maybe a year or two down the line, possibly even this year, he's a guy that you could see getting significant playing time.
I completely agree. You took mine, but yeah, Jalen Mills was rated as to be a few rounds higher. He obviously had some. You might have a hard time taking the ghetto out of him, so to speak, and he kind of hung out with the wrong crowd and kind of was around possibly a assault and battery charge or something, but he wasn't the perp in the situation. So that's in the past. I mean, like the Eagles, Doug said, history is history, past in the past. This kid, he wants to come in. He's got this chip on his shoulder now. We were lucky to get him in the 7th round. I think he could. We played at a big school. I think he can have some potential. He's an attacker. I've seen him shed some blocks in a couple videos, and it looks like he can hit. And that's the kind of guy Jim Schwartz likes. So Jalen Mills is my favorite pick besides the Wentz man.
I didn't really like any of the picks, but I will throw this name. I'll go with Blake Countess. Countess is a cornerback from Auburn. Kind of got overshadowed in the draft process because he played with a guy named Jonathan Jones. Jonathan Jones ran a 4.3340, I believe, at the combine. So kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit, but. Countess is a guy that transferred from Michigan, played 3 years at Michigan, then he played at Auburn last year. If there's like a sleeper in this draft for the Eagles, I think he could be the guy. Apparently he wowed people at his pro day. It's a pro day, who the fuck cares? But we'll see what that kid can do. I'm not really enamored by anybody. If I had maybe to pick another one, maybe Seumalo, just because we need a guard, but even that, it's like I would have taken other guys instead of him. So it's hard to really pick a name because I'm a little bit underwhelmed by this draft. But I'm not going to grade it. I know Howie Roseman was part of this. I know he doesn't do well in drafts, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. All right. Oh, I did want to bring up one quick thing before we get final thoughts because this made me laugh hysterically. All right. So. Obviously, last 2 years, Chip Kelly was the only head coach of the NFL to not take an offensive lineman in a draft. So, it's so fitting what he did. 1st round, 7th overall, quack, quack, bitches. He takes DeForest Buckner out of Oregon in the most predictable pick ever. And then he goes later in the 1st round, he trades up for Joshua Garnett when he probably didn't need to trade up, so he finally takes a lineman. What? Chip.
Fuck Chip.
Oh, you love Chip, okay?
The fucking asshole.
Yeah, but it's interesting when you look at this draft and the way that Howie Roseman handled it for the Eagles and the way Chip Kelly handled it for the 49ers. Howie Roseman pretty much what this draft symbolized, it was a big middle finger to Chip Kelly because, first off, Roseman moved his way up in the draft to get the franchise quarterback that Chip Kelly never got here in Philadelphia. And then Howie Roseman went and he didn't select an Oregon Duck until the 7th round. That's pretty much a throwaway pick. And then what he also did is he said, screw the culture thing. He went out and he got some guys with a checkered past, and he brought them on board. These are guys that have potential, but these are guys that Chip Kelly would have never selected. And then with Chip Kelly, after getting Buckner and getting his Oregon Duck on board, like Adrian just mentioned, he kind of gave the middle finger to Howie and said, look, I'm going to move up and I'm going to get a lineman. So it's interesting to see how those two, handled the draft this year.
I don't care what you think, Howie. I got a lot of ducks in my pond. I don't care. We're going to win.
I'm for
Fuck Chip.
you love Chip. You love Chip. All right.
There's no Chip imitation. I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah, well, hey, it's always good. Final thoughts time, and let's get out of here. What do you guys want to talk about?
Well, I think that, for the final thoughts, we should, talk about the guy that everyone's talking about in Philadelphia. So I think the biggest question right now is, will this guy see the field for the Philadelphia Eagles in 2016? And, well, my answer is I think that all three quarterbacks are going to see the field at some point this season. I predict that Bradford is going to start the season as a quarterback. He's either going to get hurt or he's just going to be a poor play, and, Peterson's going to say screw it. Daniel will come in for a little bit, and then the Eagles will, their record won't be that great. So the fans in Philadelphia will be chanting so hard for Carson Wentz by about week 12 or 13, and Doug Peterson will just give in. It'll almost be like the movie Rudy. The whole stadium will be cheering for Carson, and then Peterson will just give in, and he'll send him into the game, and the league will erupt.
Yeah, my final thought, we want Carson. We want Carson. I completely agree with Mike. I mean, I think Sam's either going to get hurt or benched, or he's going to get traded before. And I just think that Chase Daniel will probably also see some time and be a stopgap there. And I think we will definitely see Wentz. I couldn't tell you what week it will be, but I'm just happy that the Eagles are looking big picture, looking future, and I think by the year 2020, next few years, you watch, we might be seeing a Lombardi Trophy down Broad Street.
There it is.
With
All right.
Ginger Jesus.
Ginger Jesus, baby. That's like a topic for another show. Because I'm trying to think of like the best ginger quarterbacks of all time, and all I got is like Boomer Esiason. That's like all I got. I don't even know if he's a ginger. But yeah, that's what we'll think about for another show. There were other things I wanted to talk about in the show. We just, kind of didn't have the time for everything. I should have asked that question though, Mike. That's a good question to ask, and I never thought of asking it. Was when Wentz would play this year. I think he's going to play a little bit sooner than people think. And if you look at if you watch this press conference, this question was asked to him. And he answered it. He said this. He thinks, I think the transition for me will be a lot smoother than most would think, than most other prospects. I think at North Dakota State, I was in charge of a lot of things at the line of scrimmage, a lot of play action pass, was in charge of the audibles, run game, checks, you name it. And the other thing you got to look at with Wentz is his ability to play under center. So he's a little bit more developed in the way he drops back, because a lot of college quarterbacks, it's all shotgun for them. Well, Wentz wasn't all shotgun. He played in a pro-style West Coast offense. So I'm curious to see when he's going to be ready. If we start like 2-6, he will be playing the second half of the year, I think. But I think the more realistic option is probably the last 4 games of the year, because I think we're going to be good enough to stay in it, but bad enough to not have a chance. So I think we'll be like 5-7 by week 12, and then we'll start them, and that's what I think. So there.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the pressure is going to be so high for Peterson to put Wentz in there that eventually Peterson will just give in, and Wentz will come in, fans will go crazy, and well, that'll be the start of the Wentz era here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I definitely think around that week 11, 12 time, after that stretch from we play the Bengals, Green Bay, Seattle, I believe, and another team mixed in there, I think the Ravens. Those 4 games after that stretch, whatever our record is depending on what our record is after those games, I definitely think Wentz will have enough time under his belt to learn the offense, and Chase Daniel is even a great team sport, and I think he's going to have a big influence in helping him learn, because he knows Doug Peterson's offense very well. Like you said, Wentz has already adapted to a pro-style West Coast offense. And, Sam isn't going to help him out because he's a bitch. So, I'm excited to get this Wentz era started, man. Pumped.
Yeah, and apparently Sam is already building a customized crib for the sideline. The fucking baby. All right, so that's it for this show. That's it for this week. For the guys, for the fellas, Mike Owens, Jeremy Burton, I'm Adrian Fedke. We are out, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you guys enjoyed the package that my boy Anthony Pinto at PhillyInfluencer.com put together of the time there at Thursday night at Nick's Roast Beef on Cotman Avenue. What a great fucking night it was. You guys can check it out. That's I'll throw that video in the links box. So there you go. All right, we're out. Later. Go Birds.
Later.